Okay, morning, Michael. I'm just going to screen record my answers to your questions so I can work in real time. This is the newer version of the file that you sent me. Apologies, I didn't get back to you on the first one. Last week with no lecturing, I was focusing on a whole lot of other stuff, work and family and other things. But yeah, this is looking good at face value. It's fairly well readable or legible, should I say, at face value with the colors and the layout. It's looking quite neat. Neat is often a good indication of detail, especially considering how much is shown here. So what I'll do is I'll use this file as the information response, and I will answer your question verbally based on your email. So let's go hit the first one and pick up on what you've gone through there. Okay, so here's your CAD questions. Am I still working on the right scale? I changed to decimal millimeters, which seems correct. Also ignore the office design plans on the bottom. Okay, am I working on the right scale? So let's see. Right scale here should be a case of if you are working at 1:1, these items should literally be the actual measurements shown. So 1197, 1197. That says to me that you're working on the right scale. You're working at 1:1, which is perfect. A 220 or a 220 wall is fine, and all of these seem to be the same height. Let's see here, from there to there. That's that 225.6. That's about 0.6 mils off, but it's pretty close. So you are working on 1:1, which is correct. You have an annotative comes up later. You've got an annotative scale shown here, 1:20. This should be that, but also this should be off. You want to have annotative off. I'll come to it later. You talk about annotative dimensions. Annotative, if you can figure out how to use it properly, by all means go ahead and use it. But what I find is usually it creates more problems for students trying to use annotative, because essentially what you're trying to do is scale things according to a determined scale rather than just drawing things as they are and scaling them in the viewport. I don't use annotative. I never have. I don't know that I ever will. Also, I don't use CAD as much as I used to anyway. Annotative is relatively new, so I tend to steer away from annotative. It does cause problems in most cases. And having said that, most of my format options for textile and these sorts of things, I stay away from annotative. Even in styles, which you should have loaded here, you should have some 1:100, 1:15, 1:20 styles loaded here according to how the course runs. I would also make sure that those are not annotative, so that would be off in that case. And then also the same for format dimension styles. There should be some dimension styles here that are not annotative. And then you have your dimensions set up for your different scales. If, however, you can figure out how to get them to scale according to each scale that you want, that's fine. But it's going to play a little bit of havoc with your scaling and stuff later on. So make sure that it's correct, etc. It does require a little bit more initial work, but if you can figure it out and get it to work for you, that's fine. It's a little bit beyond where the course is at, though. Okay, so that's first question. You seem to be drawing at 1:1, which is fine. So your things are actually the right scale, and you don't have those blocks anymore as per question 1, because this is now the new file. Question 2, do the dimensions need to be annotative, and should I just make them white? Annotative, I've spoken about. Should I make them white? It doesn't matter. The colors are up to you, what color you want to have them at. You can see now that your dimensions have disappeared because I've changed the annotative scale. I've turned off this show annotative objects, so you are using an annotative scaling element. So those are all going to turn off if I change annotative objects here. So I'm going to leave that on for now. They don't have to be white. It's just that sometimes elements that aren't like hatches and things, or that aren't bounded by something else, are hard to see standing open, because obviously you can't see them. So obviously if I just change this to white, for example, sometimes those are easier to read on a black screen, but it doesn't have to be a particular color. The colors are for you to determine differences between things. So if you can read it fine as purple, it's fine. Generally what I say is stay away from dark blue on your layers, which you don't seem to really have, fine. And then also in many cases is try and stick with the colors 1 to 8. The reason 1 to 8 works well is because later when we're doing plot layouts and we use colors to do line weight, these colors are going to print as color, unless you go and set 150 to be black and determine its height. So that just means you're dealing with way more numbers. Either you can deal with 8 or you can deal with up to 150 if you want to, but it does become personal preference. Okay, so obviously my way I lecture it or teach it is best practice, and simplified as much as possible. Obviously any deviation from that is possible because of the way you can work in CAD, but otherwise I'll always refer back to the standard, which makes it obviously simpler to lecture to 13 different people. Okay, so also something I've just noticed here in terms of your section lines, and I'll do this as I go along. This should be represented by a sort of triangle of sorts. I'm just going to do this freehand, but this should be represented like this. Depending on which way you're looking, I can't comment on that yet, but normally it would be that arrow suggests which way you're looking, and obviously if it's the other way around, you would need to mirror this, so you can do it that way. Text you can determine whether text actually mirrors or not. In most cases, CAD knows the text needs to be legible, so it'll keep it the right way even though you've mirrored it. So I don't know which way that needs to be, but that's just a note for all your section lines. This line type for section lines, okay. Section lines is cool. I can see you've also got it on a 101 color. Again, you're not using the 1 to 8 colors, but that's fine. You've got it set up as a dash line, which is perfect, which is cool, and that seems to be okay. And your line type scale is 5, which means it's something that you've changed yourself, which is cool. What I normally do is I work on a global line type scale. So I change this value, LT scale. I change it from 1 to a value of 30. And why I do that is in most cases then if I leave these line types at their determined line scale, which is 1 in this case, it normally works out, line type scale normally works well for most line types straight out of the line type manager. So these ones still okay. You won't have to change the scale of them each time, which means managing them is a little bit easier. And most of these lines that you're working with then, like these ones, most of these will work pretty well at a line type scale of 1 for, yes, I'm recording a session, yeah? Ah, cool. That's cool. That's cool. That's cool. And but that's a global setting which you can not change or change depending on your values. Obviously, this has now jumped to very small scale, which is why you would have come here and you changed it to 5, which is fine. It just means that you've got to do it for each case. This a property of an item is specific to that item, whereas a global setting like LT scale will change it for the whole environment, which is cool. Also, what's nice with LT scale is when it comes to layouts and stuff and your dashes and dots aren't showing, like in this case here, you go PS LT scale, you hit that and you change it from 1 to 0, and you REA, which is regen all, and then you should see now you start getting your dash and dot lines showing in your layout space, which is also a big issue that students have. Just want to check something here. This scale is not a recognized scale, but this was like 1 is to 100. Okay, so we need to look at what's happening there with scale, but we'll come back to that. Rightio. Okay, let's go back to your questions. Should the hatching also be another color? What I tend to do with hatching is I tend to find where my hatch is. I tend to use one of these colors, like a light gray, 253. The reason I do that is so that this is a wall, but it's on the hatching layer, so that's interesting. So let's put this on layer, walls of floor or ceiling. Walls of floor or ceiling. I think what's happening is it's the boundary of the hatch. So I'm going to select the hatch and go draw order, send to the back. Okay, there we go. So there is my hatch behind. My wall, in this case, is a walls or floors or ceiling. Interesting to have a layer that's all of those things, wall or floor or ceiling. I would separate those into walls. I tend to do walls in red. just because it makes it lands to a CAD standard of doing brickwork walls in red for council submissions. You're coloring them in red. It comes from that sort of standard. So, and obviously it's now changed other stuff, which is revealing. You know, you got a whole lot of stuff now on the walls layer. So I'd keep walls are pretty important. I'd keep walls as a separate layer. I wouldn't have them all floor or ceiling. I'd separate those out. Floor often looks like the floor wouldn't be the same thickness. You've got a continuous line here. It would be red. There's no line weight associated with it. Let's just see if I go here and say view options. Is line weight on here? Yes, line weight is on, so that is set as default. So walls I'd normally put it maybe like a 0.25 or something along those lines. So you get a little bit of line weights showing. Well, anything above 0.25 will show. But again, I don't use these line weights here. I use these line weights over here. So this is page setup manager. I use line weights here. I'll go and set up a line weight table here, and I'll set it up there. So I don't use line weights in the layer, because again, if I'm using line weights in layer, I've got to control it for each layer, same like you've done line type scale for each item. I just go set it according to my 8 colors, and it's much simpler. I think that's how the notes do it as well. Okay, so that is, I do it a separate color, normally a very thin line and a gray line, just so that there is some differentiation between the solid dark cut line on the outside and the hatch on the inside, which is to show patterning, which will show material. So I do it as a lighter color. I think it's quite cool. Something that I've noticed here as well is that when you're, if I raise this quickly, okay, so that's correct. We should see that like that. This is just a display order thing, and the colors would actually print. If that was a thicker wall line, it would actually print over that and make it thick, so it'll look fine. I just want to show, I want it to look like this in my case so that I can see this is a problem. That would need to be trimmed. So that line, I'm going to use trim, double space bar to trim this line, see if it will work. Work. Oh, there it is. Erase that line. Let's see. Cool, and the wall is back in play there. So I would want this to be a clear opening, and then have the window in there as a thinner line, so it reads as a break in the wall. And the same would happen with the doors. This obviously these are showing on top because they're drawn afterwards. The walls came first normally. So what you could do is just select all the wall layers and then bring it all to the front, but you kind of want that dominating like that. Okay, so that starts to read a little bit better. Next question, are elevations fine? The elevations look pretty good in terms of legibility. Levels, you talk about them later, but levels again are normally done with a little bit of a triangular element. So what we'll do is we'll do this. It's obviously not symmetrical in any case, but what I would do is I would have them on the same layer. I'd have that looking like that. I'd have this using italics a lot. Steer clear of italics. Because you normally, we just don't normally use italics. So what I would do is I'd have it as LVL for the upper ones, but I'd probably have this one as FFL. Turn italics off. Where's italics? This is single line text. Where is your, okay, so that's that. Let's do the properties of it like this. Style, new style. Style is this. Set up by style, set the format, text style, new style. I wouldn't have it italicized. Where is your Vidana italic regular apply? Close. Okay, I'd have it like that. So normally what you'd have is for your first level, you would have snap in. So you'd have this like that, and you have 0.0 millimeters finished floor level was your 0.0, and then everything else is above that. So you'd have this triangle again. I'd copy it up to the different levels there, and there. If, for example, you had lines that were too close together, so this is not a symmetrical triangle, what you can do is you can just do it below the line, like so. Erase the source objects, and I'll do the same. I'll just move this below the line too. If you've got lines that are too close together to fit everything in nicely, it's the same. It's referencing that line is what you're saying. And again, this would be millimeters. So you go. The 0.00 is literally to define that the 0 is a 0 point, and this could be is it? I must just check LVL. I'm getting confused. Let me see if I can open a bathroom canal walk. This is a project of mine. Just want to check the level thing in here quickly. So the levels on it. That's just lighting. That one. Open recent. Let's see this one. Why is this giving me such a random point? Let's save that one. Open recent. This is interesting. Project. It's not working so well, is it? No, that might have worked actually. Let's try this one. It's downloading it from an online server, so it'll take a little while. Okay, so wow, this one's looking like that. It's a massive file. That was a problem file, that one. Let's see if I can get this to sort itself out. Ah, there we go. So I normally do my levels like this. That's it, yeah. There we go. 0.00. So triangle, dimension, level, and then if it's a specific level, level of services, underslab, more slab, underside, more slab. So there's descriptions that go in there. And then FFL is finished floor level, 0.0 millimeters finished floor level. So that's how I would normally do my levels like that. And these lines I'll just take all the way across. Some elevations are all lined up next to each other like this. So those levels go all the way through my drawings, which is kind of helpful. So you make sure that everything is lined up correctly. Okay. So in your case, you can add some more information, put a 0, 0 in there, and put this triangle in the front or the back, depending on which side of the elevation you want it to have. And obviously your dashes and dots have changed because I've changed my LT scale value. LT scale to 1, but if you change it to 30, you can change that. Changed it to 15 maybe, it might look a little better, whatever the cases. So that's levels. I'm going to stop the recording of this one, otherwise the files are going to get massive, and then I'll start from question 5 again for the next one. Carrying on with the next set of questions from question 5. Can I just use annotative scale to change the size of dimension text? You have, again, comes with disclaimer, annotative scale is confusing. You need to understand your scales pretty well. You have used it. If you are using it, you need to make sure, obviously, that you've got view annotative items turned on down at the bottom here, which is there. So because if you have it off, you'll see your dimensions disappear. There they disappear, so you need to have view annotative on to see them. And if you are using them and they are correct, then that's fine. What seems to have happened here is that even if I change the scale of this drawing, it doesn't seem to change the scale of these things. Which for me says it's probably been set up a little bit badly, or it's going to have issues with your layout tabs later on. So layout could become a problem when you're trying to do things to a scale and layout. Like for this, for example, if we go page setup manager here quickly, edit this. Let's say this is supposed to be an A3 size page. So we are ISO A3. Layouts. This needs to always be 1:1. 1:1. That's fine. Quality. That's okay. Now we do that. Close this, and we see what's happening now to our viewport. Change my viewport to fit the page. Can't snap to those lines, unfortunately, but they're there. And then I do my scales now correctly. 1:100. See, that's an A3. 1:100 looking a little bit small. I'm wondering if the scales aren't a problem. Okay, so it's 1:50. Now you check where your dimensions aren't working so like that. So there they are there, okay. I have to turn those back on. So this might be working okay for you if you figure it out. But in most cases I told them not to use annotator because it gets too confusing. Right here. Next question was, what can I actually still apply hatches to? There aren't too many things to apply hatches to. It's essentially walls. If you've got a floor surface, you can use a hatch to designate a floor surface, like tiled or timber or something along those lines. Also, if you're doing details, you would have more hatches for steel and drywall and connecting bolts and all sorts of things like that. And another one that we'd often have, which interior designers seem to love not showing, is a hatch for foundations, which a lot of interior designers don't ever do. So they would normally have, I'm going to draw this very quickly. There would normally be a foundation shown in a drawing. And the wall would extend to that. And then this would use the hatch AR concrete. And that would be your hatch for AR concrete. So what you'd be doing is you'd have a concrete hatch here as well, as opposed to as well as a wall hatch. So you'd have hatch. Those are normally your two main hatches, walls and concrete. But for the template, they want you to do a whole lot. There was a list in one of the activities of all the hatches you needed to show that you would then be using for all sorts of other materials in your project and for details and stuff as well, not always just for plans and sections. As a note, I normally do this in green, so I normally use that color for foundation. They're quite a thickish line, 0.5, 0.4 maybe along those lines. Okay, that's hatching. Also, another brief doesn't specify that we need to transfer the drawing to that. So yeah, the brief might not at this stage, but it will become a thing later. Printing to layout, it's going to be required, and it will obviously activities that deal with that. You use page setup manager, and you edit the particular layout that you're working on. Layout 1, you choose a page size. A print or plotter is not important. Unless you're on a PC, then you need to do this one, DWG to PDF. That'll set up a PDF printer. This always needs to be 1:1. That's portrait or landscape. Plot style tables we'll get to, but normally I set these to plot by color, weight, and then so these are normally by default are fine, which is fine, and then that's okay as well. And then what to print I normally do by window, and I go and choose the window that I want to make sure everything fits. But normally by drawing a big viewport to start, and then I say okay, and it'll set that up like that. And then if I go now print this and do like a preview, I'll see what's happening with it. And this is all in color. So this is because I haven't set my thing to print properly, and obviously something's happening with my hatch, it's not printing, and something's happening with dimensions, it's not happening. So I need to go check what's happening with those things. And paper space is a good way to test what's happening with certain line weights and items that aren't printing correctly. And sometimes it's got to do here with your layout is here, no print. So no print is blocks or no print. So if everything's a block, it's not going to print. Depth points, which is a default in CAD, don't worry about it. Dimensions are set to no print. So that one's come off. It's because you've copied layers. And doors are set to no print, which is also no good. Hatches are set to no print, which is also no good. And these last two are text. Again, turn off no print. And this is windows. Again, no print. So now if I go and print this again, all those set up properly, and go preview, there we go. All those things are back and they're showing correctly, which is cool, except the ones that are color. So what I can do then is, and this is I'd go, a cheaper version for now would be a monochrome, which will make everything black, but won't do line weights properly. I would probably use one of my CTBs and go preview with that. And you see most of my colors 1 to 8 are black and white, and it looks quite nicely. And then you can see here what I've done is my walls have got a weight to them and my hatching doesn't. So that's quite a nice transfer of information for your CAD stuff to work well when you plot it. And that's that for there. I'm going to stop this recording. That brings us to layouts, which are also involved, but do the activities regarding this. So it's quite important that you go through the step-by-step process to set up your layouts in the different tabs. And then let's get to then the next question, which is, well, it's not really, it's more of a statement. And we have other blocks, I'll get rid of them later, what you did, because I'm using a later version of the file. How much detail can I draw? You can draw as much detail as you want, but be mindful of the fact that details are normally repeated elements. So if you're going to be drawing a detail, okay, so this is a drywall structure, it looks like. You've got a sort of channel showing here, which is fine. And see, it comes down to scale. So if you were drawing this at 1:100, there's no ways that I would be drawing these elements in a drywall section, because you're never going to see it. A drywall is what, 80 mils, and at 1:100 it's just going to look a bit blobby with this detail over here. It's going to look a little bit thick, and you can see, like if you're looking at it at that scale, you don't really see that. So with details like that, I would keep the information low for 1:100. If you're pumping up the detail to 1:20, then you might be showing just this bathroom layout in a much bigger scale. So 1:20, you would start seeing this kind of detail, in which case you would then turn on those layers. So what I would do is this detail that you've shown in here, yeah, it's for you. What I would do is these elements, I'd probably have them on a layer which only shows this detail on a 1:20 plot, and you can turn them off for other plots, which we get to. So you can freeze layers according to tabs. So you can make them change according to, what have you got going on here? You've got a viewport color showing differently. You don't have to show viewport color. Don't know why it's on. I might have turned it on. So you might not even have this in the file, but that means change the color per viewport. But you can, this viewport freeze and new viewport freeze, you can turn things off and on. And I've done that for Brittany. I showed her how to do that. I think it's a video somewhere, or was on a collab session. But yeah, the detail is going to get lost at 1:100. And typically what you'd have as a detail would be standard. So you could draw a detail of how a drywall connects to a brick wall and reuse that detail as a little call out. So you kind of do a little circle around this. Okay, I'm drawing in paper space. You draw a circle around this, you'd have a little thing saying detail 1, and then you'd go and show your detail at like a 1:1, 1:2 scale and reuse that, but you'd show in the drawing where that detail applies and not have the detail there. You'd have it on a little separate drawing. That's kind of how details tend to work, as opposed to putting all the detail into your drawing, which is great, but you're wasting time and you're possibly jeopardizing legibility in getting this to read at the scale that you'll be plotting it out at. So I normally keep detail fairly low for the scale that you're doing this at. But again, you could draw everything. 1:1, you could draw infinite detail if you want to do screw connections, bolt connections, but they start getting a little bit wasted on these drawings. Why do select objects just go bigger and not smaller when I try to scale them? I'm supposed to type in numbers. So this has got to do with often your origin point in a drawing. So if I go zoom E for extents and I zoom out and see, there's your origin point there. So often if you're scaling stuff, so for example, if I wanted to scale, let's delete that door just for fun, and I wanted to scale this, and I just go scale and I specify a base point. It's very hard to get it to go smaller or bigger depending on how your computer's set up, because what happens is it's referencing this whole massive space. So this is kind of my scale that I'm trying to do here. So if I just try and click this to make it a bit bigger and do it like that, look how big this door gets. The door is much bigger than anything else in my drawing. So what happens is it gets huge. So yes, it is a case of numbers. So you go scale, but it wants as a base point, so you'd select a base point. And then it's a scale factor. So if you wanted to double it, it's 2. If you wanted to triple it, it's 3. If you wanted to halve it, it's 0.5, etc., etc. So let's say I wanted to halve this. I would say I want a scale factor of 0.5. It would be half as big, right? And let's bump it back up there again. If I wanted to scale it twice, I'd go 2, and it will be twice as big. Often though what happens is you actually want to scale to a particular dimension of something. So let's say I had lines set up like that, and I wanted this door to fit in that space, whatever it is. I would select this item, I'd go scale, I'd select a base point. Then I'd use another option which says down at the bottom here, reference. I hit the value R, it gives me a reference. Then it says specify the reference length. As this length of my existing door, and then the new length, I make sure that I extend it to there, and I can scale something from something to something else. And that's actually the more valuable scale method. Unless you know the factor, that's fine, but in most cases you just want to be able to scale from something to something else and get it to fit into something. So that's what I would do there in that case. Just want to check what's happening here. I think I want to scale the whole drawing. Okay, that's fine. So that's how scaling works. Factor or reference, which is more valuable. How am I supposed to annotate the dimensions on the elevations? Annotating the dimensions on the elevations, I showed that a little bit at the LVL thingy. So that's what you would do. You're only doing level dimensions on elevations and sections. You're not doing anything else. If you want to do anything else, it's a detail. You call out a detail and you dimension that thing fully in a detailed drawing. But elevations are levels. Other dimensions are in plan. And that's how you do them. Annotating in general. Can I annotate the way I'm doing it now? Can I use lines that direct towards object annotate? Yeah, so in terms of annotations, yeah, if you've got callouts like this, you can do it inside the space. And if you look at a full submission drawing, let me see if I can open one again. Open recent. I wonder if I've got the Schaefer one here. That was a very, 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 very detailed. Let's see if I can do. I wonder if this is going to work. So what project is this? 27 subsea. Schaefer, yeah. Okay, so let's open this project and see. So 9 megabyte file, so it's going to download it first. But this is a fairly detailed house plan, sections, elevations, etc. And in elevations, you normally annotate on one side and dimension on the other, depending on how complex the drawing is. So you'll see here, for example, I've got this particular drawing, this is in Paperspace obviously. I've got these call out animations there, and I've got squiggly lines so they don't get confused with, so I'm using a spline line, they don't get confused with straight lines of the drawing. So I've got my levels here, underside wall plate, underside slab, finished floor level, negative 0.2, so there's a datum somewhere along here. And then I've got these call outs like that. That's in elevations and stuff. If I go and look at model space, that's just an area schedule. I go look at like a floor plan or something here, so room window. So then I've got annotations all over the place, and again it's just a case of hierarchy and setting them up. And obviously I've got all of them on here because I've set this up to show certain things in different layouts. So electrical and plumbing is all together, but I don't normally show them all at the same time. So annotating like you've got is fine. Sometimes you need to put them in blocks to separate them. You need to obviously have the big label of what it is, and then you've got other smaller labels that come through. But it's just trying to keep neatness really is what you're trying to do. So here I've got a whole lot more annotations. You can see they're kind of jumping all over each other. There's quite a detailed annotation. I'll get to the detail of stuff now. And there's lots here, but these layers turn off and on depending on my layout, which is using that viewport freeze function later on, which we'll get to. So in this case, that's a one plan, and it's got plumbing and electrical. So if I go look at these particular, so if I go look at electrical for staff, the layout, you'll see here all this is showing as the electrical. And if I go look at my layers, you'll see I've got a viewport freeze on for some of these. Where are they? Sorry, if I activate the viewport, so let me just do this quickly. Activate the viewport. There you go. You see there's a viewport freeze there for window numbers. I didn't need it in this particular layout. And there's a viewport freeze here for stormwater. I didn't need it in this particular layout. Sewer, didn't want in this layout. So I don't want any of my drainage plumbing stuff in this layout. Remove. What else is off here? These two. Hatch paving, didn't need that, very detailed. Hatching for the roof, that's off in this layout. It's the same plan, but these layers. Furniture's off, I didn't need that for my electrical. Didn't need door numbers, didn't need dimensions for certain things. I had different levels of dimensions. Contours are off as well. So certain things are off for this particular layout. If I go to another layer here, so that was electrical staff. If I go to staff plan, you'll see other things are turned on now. My electrical stuff will be off. Loads. So electrical stuff's off, but other stuff's on. Door numbers are back on, doors are on, annotations on. There's way more stuff here now. So I'm turning layers off and on, but everything's on one plan. Okay, so that means that relates to your annotations. Try and keep them neat. In plan, don't do italics. Use leader lines as what they call them, leader lines to things. If you're pointing to stuff with the arrow on the end, that's fine. Yes, you can annotate outside the floor plan. Just try and keep them neat. Some guys will have like a paragraph of text almost down the right hand side, and then leader lines jumping off to the plan wherever. Other guys will annotate all the way around the plan, or annotate within the plan. Depends on how neat you want to be. How detailed can I go with annotating, like as example named or hand? Yes, you can go quite detailed. Something to actually look at is the AutoSpec website. So if you go to here and you go to AutoSpec, you can set up an account here for free. And you can get specifications for very specific things from this particular website. When it loads, we'll come back here. Okay, so you can go search for stuff, search for products. So you can go brick, for example, brick wall maybe. Let's see what we get. It's slow today. Wow, a lot of brick stuff. Everybody's doing jelly brick. Let's see if we can find. Let's do cake brick for an example. Oh, this is going so slowly. So we can say we want concrete plaster grade brick, because that's what we're doing, cement brick with plaster finish. We want a hollow maxi. Okay, we can write a specification with it now. Might want to log in. Okay, so we want a hollow maxi, single story dwelling for superstructure, not foundations. And boom, there's your thingy. Copy it to clipboard. There's your specification. We can come to CAD now, and we can say for your particular drawing, if this is your walls here, and you want to annotate your wall, let's just take that out. Let's double click that. Let's put it in there. Boom. That would be your spec. Fully, obviously, you would need to do this as a multi-line, not a single line. Is that so? You need to do. You need to figure out how to get this to go multi-line. There we go. That's a full spec. I'm just using Shift Enter to. That's it there. So that would be a full spec for that wall, obviously not for that basin. Generally speaking, though, what we would normally do is we'd go and we would do Smith. So S M R F F. Okay. Smith is size, material, interval, fixing, finish. So we've got the size of the material, so timber will be a 230 by 75 millimeter by 6 meter. So that would be that size. Let's just do it there. I'm going to put it afterwards so they go together. So that'll be 230 by 70 by 6 millimeter, PAR, timber, PAR, pine. PAR is planed all round. Pine, that's the material. At 300 cc, which is centers, that's the spacing of it, like if you're doing a pergola or something. Pocket hole screwed up the top. Spelled that wrong. Pocket hole screwed to substructure and varnished 3 coats, wood oak, wood seal. Okay, that would kind of be a spec. So size, the material, the interval that it's fixed at, the fixing, how it's connected, and what it's finished with. So you might not have all of the Smith stuff, but you'll often have most of them. And that's a basic spec. If you just got it from a design point of view, if you know kind of what you want the size and the thing to be, that would be a spec. Otherwise, you've got your auto spec, which is normally a trade specification, as in it'll be a trade name, and it will be their suggestion. So recycled concrete brick, it's got a code, it's got a size, it's got information about it, it's manufactured according to a SANS code, it's laid and blah blah blah, and it gives you the joints and the fixing and how it all goes together, and it gives you another item. So that's the auto spec kind of spec, which you can get as well. So that's annotation. They can get very detailed. That's that. And then the last one is, what else should be a block? A sink, bed, a chair. Yeah, so furniture things are often blocks, so items. A title block could also be a block, so that's in your paper space. You could have a title block as a block. So when you go set up a title block here with your title block and your name, that can be a block that you just use on each thing. And then it means when you change your information, it all updates. And you'd have certain things like drawing name and number and scale and stuff maybe not part of the block, so that you can update them independently. But that could be a block. But otherwise, yeah, blocks are done like you've done for specific objects. So all of this furniture could be blocks, which means you can edit them, etc., etc., etc. Oh, you had a question about selecting things. So this is further on. Okay, so further on, my walls are on the wrong layer. Okay, so we picked that up, correct. Do I select every line separately and add it to the wall layer, or is there a faster way to do it? There is a thing called a quick select, which for my purposes are here. The shortcut is Q select, so you can go start typing in Q select, but a quick select is there. Might be in your layers, by your layers on the PC. But what you can do is you can say use the current selection, which is the whole drawing. And then you can say, okay, you want to use object type, you want to make it something else. I've got not current selection, I want to use, entire drawing. If you say, okay, you want to select blocks, you can see it started highlighting all the blocks. And if you could say, you can add to it, you say, no, okay, it needs to be by a certain layer. So let's say it's probably layer furniture. You can select all the blocks that are on layer furniture. See, there's a preview. There's there, or you could say select the opposite of all that. So you could choose for your wall, in case you could choose the wall layer and select inverse, whatever. So you can say apply, and you can also do this a few times and append it to the previous selection set. So you go apply. Now I've got all my blocks that are furniture selected. If I wanted to move those, I could move those all together, but you've only got one thing. Only one item is on that. So quick select is there. It's quite a helpful thing to select, and you can go through selection rules to select certain things, which is quite cool. So that's quick select. We'll answer that one. It's fine. Fix layer problem. So that's the other way to do it. Turn everything off, and what you had left behind was your thing. So there's another thing where you can do, I think it's called this, where you can select a layer and you can go isolate, and you can say isolate objects, and it does do what you've done, but quickly. It turns off all the layers temporarily, so you can work on that particular object. And then you'd have to go isolate, end object isolation, and brings everything back. So isolate's also a way to do it. And then that's your proof. So cool, that's all the questions for now. I think I've answered all of them.